Yo, what up, Josh Rubin? Today I want to talk to you about the female cycle, PMS, menopause, to give you some insight on why this stuff might be going on. There's so many clients that we work with, of course, female. You know, there are males suffering from hormone imbalances, but this is about you women. Let's focus on you and how fragile you are, how fragile your hormonal system is. We have to look at, first off, as a woman, what I find is with most of my female clients, I actually know more about the female cycle than the client sitting in front of me. And I find that to be an issue because the only way you can actually fix or heal or regulate the dysfunction that's going on is to understand what's going on at the cell level during your cycle. Most women don't even know how long their cycle is. They don't even know when they ovulate, and so forth. And we have to know these things in order to kind of figure out what's going on to balance the cycle. Now, if we look at, we're going to simplify it. If we look at the female cycle, it should be 28 to 30 days. Most women is 26 nowadays. Some are actually 50. Some women don't even get their cycle, and they're taking a pill and they get their cycle twice a year. I have some women clients that are taking hormonal medication so they don't get their cycle because they say, I can't stand getting my cycle. You know, how would you like bleeding from your crotch every single month? Well, of course, I can't empathize. I don't know. But at the same time, it's actually a normal physiological process that goes on. And you don't have to suffer. If you can regulate it or understand what's going on and regulating it with nutrition, as well as possible supplementation, you can actually get a lot of benefit. We've helped so many people with hormone imbalances, infertility, and things like that by educating them so they understand what's going on. So if you look at the female cycle, you have the follicular phase, ovulation, luteal phase. And we're going to simplify it. We could say estrogen when they cross as ovulation, and then progesterone. So typically the first half of the phase, and that can range depending on what you read, and it can range per days depending on the person. But the first half of the phase, we could say, you know, can be around maybe 12 days. It could be a little longer. Ovulation is typically, according to Dr. Timmons, should be 1 to 3 days. It could, back in the day, it was even 4. Most women nowadays, it's 1 to 2. So the first half of the cycle is where estrogen is more dominant. It doesn't mean it's dominant. It's above progesterone. And that's why it's hard to get pregnant during the first half of your cycle. And that's where a lot of women actually get a lot of their symptoms. The PMS, the bloating, the diarrhea, the moodiness, the cramping, all those different things. During ovulation is when they actually crisscross. And they crisscross during ovulation because ovulation is when, you know, estrogen stimulates the release of the egg. And the progesterone actually makes the lining of the uterus. And if the egg is fertilized, progesterone will actually bring nutrients, oxygen, and everything to the fetus as well as the organs. It's progestation. So this is when they crisscross, and in the luteal phase is typically where estrogen actually becomes slightly more dominant than estrogen. It doesn't mean estrogen drops. It just means it should be slightly more dominant than progesterone. Now, another reason why a lot of women get their symptoms around ovulation, they might get acne and stuff like that, is because the progesterone is not surging enough to come up over the estrogen. And this is a problem. And we have to look at why. Now, I'm not here to give solutions, as you know. I got a list of things I want to read off to you guys and talk about, because there are many things. But we have to think about why. Why is my progesterone not surging? Why am I getting these symptoms? What is going with my hormonal cycle? Do I have an issue with the luteal phase? Do I have an issue with the follicular phase? And what's causing it? So let's look at it. Some things that we need to focus on are this. We need to focus on salt and sugar. Salt actually increases carbon dioxide at the cell level. So when your cells are producing carbon dioxide, they're utilizing thyroid, they're utilizing cholesterol efficiently, and it's upregulating the thyroid. Now your body actually uses those things, and it actually, cholesterol creates pregnenolone, which creates progesterone. So it's very agonistic to your body to help your body to produce estrogen and to produce progesterone and downregulate estrogen. So salt, using the right type of salt, is very important because it increases the metabolic rate of the cell. It increases blood volume in the body, and when you're estrogen dominant, estrogen actually pulls proteins like albumin and water out of the blood, it pushes them into the tissues, which creates swelling. So the salt can actually upregulate progesterone through that mitochondrial respiration because your body's going to use cholesterol efficiently to produce more progesterone in a sense. And it's going to increase blood volume. At the same time, it's going to release or eliminate intracellular calcium, which is highly inflammatory. It can actually lower adrenaline in the body, which can help regulate metabolism, regulate blood sugar, and actually elevate progesterone levels, which are anti-inflammatory. And when you're in this inflammatory state, most people, like hypothyroid people, actually lose sodium in their urine. So taking the right types of salt in the diet is very facilitatory to your metabolism, to your cells, to help the body actually regulate not only blood sugar, but thyroid, cholesterol conversion, and pregnenolone, progesterone function and production, which is all going to downregulate estrogen. You can look at magnesium too, because magnesium actually synthesizes with progesterone to regulate blood sugar, to actually increase sodium retention, to increase thyroid production in the cell. And things like coffee, fruits, bone broth, things like that actually have, in chocolate, actually have magnesium in them. And if they're used correctly, can actually benefit the body. We have to look at things like serotonin and tryptophan. And we can get these things from supplements, of course, but we can get these from being in an inflammatory state. The lower your carbon dioxide production is in the cell, the higher your serotonin levels are going to be, which is going to downregulate the thyroid, which is going to prevent the cholesterol to pregnenolone conversion to progesterone conversion or production. So we have to look at the things we're eating, and maybe the foods we're eating are actually causing excess tryptophan and serotonin. Like eating a diet high in muscle meats. Eating a diet, if you're in an inflammatory state, now we say drink dairy, but if you're drinking too much, there is L-tryptophan in it. And when you're in an inflammatory state, you're actually going to convert that L-tryptophan to serotonin. So you have to watch out how much dairy you drink based on the state you're in. There's other foods like kiwis, pineapples, bananas that actually have a higher amount of serotonin in them and serotonin-like qualities in the body. So we have to look at, yes, those are tropical fruits. We have to look at the person we're putting them in. So serotonin, like I mentioned, downregulates your metabolic rate. It increases all your inflammatory markers like estrogen, which is antagonistic to progesterone. It actually causes the release of cortisol in the body, which is catabolic to muscle tissue, and actually stimulates the release of estrogen, which again stimulates the release of cortisol. Inhibits thyroid conversion, inhibits the immune system, overloads the liver, and so forth. So using things like salt, aspirin in the right dose, light therapy, saturated fats, and the right types of carbohydrates can actually help down-regulate the serotonin response in the body, and of course eliminating muscle meats or these fruits at the time in the state that you're in to help increase progesterone production and down-regulate estrogen production. We have to look at unsaturated fats in the diet. Of course, you know, a lot of what I'm talking about is based off the work of Dr. Ray Peat, Broda Barnes, some of Chris Masterjohn's work, Philip Young, Constance Martin, Shanklin, Hoden, Dr. Brewer, all these people. So it's not just Ray Peat. Polyunsaturated fatty acids that are in vegetables, nuts, cod liver oil, fatty fishes, things like that. They inhibit the immune system. They downregulate the thyroid, overload the liver, inhibit thyroid conversion, which is important to make that cholesterol to pregnenolone to progesterone conversion. They upregulate estrogen. They block sugar from getting in the cell, which now your cells can't work properly again, so you're not producing enough CO2. They promote estrogen production, and they promote the release of free fatty acids into the bloodstream, which is highly inflammatory, can increase triglycerides, and so forth. And if you're doing that, you're once again lowering blood volume, pushing water into the tissues, increasing estrogen, which is antagonistic to thyroid production, to the liver, and to progesterone production. So the bottom line is we need to eliminate these to actually upregulate progesterone production. And of course you can do this by eliminating PUFAs, increasing saturated fats, because saturated fats actually help the body detoxify, in a sense, from unsaturated fats. You can use supplements like niacinamide to help offset this. But you actually have to look at the liver health as well, because the liver is where you actually detoxify estrogen. And the liver actually uses anti-inflammatory proteins like broth, gelatin, eggs, shellfish, whitefish, especially broth, to actually detoxify estrogen. Now, you might have a gut issue that's creating overburden on the liver. That's not allowing your liver to detoxify estrogen, even though you're taking in the right amount of protein. Or you could have a metabolic insufficiency that's causing this. But we have to look at liver health. And at the same time, T3 actually facilitates that conversion and helps the liver detoxify estrogen. So we have to think about ourselves. We have to think about the foods we're eating. We have to think about, is the liver working properly to make the conversion to upregulate it to progesterone? And if not, what's blocking that conversion that's going to upregulate estrogen, recirculating it in the digestive system, and not allowing T3 production to go up, and not allowing that conversion from cholesterol to pregnenolone to progesterone, which is what we want, which is anti-inflammatory. So you have to think about these things. Everyone talks about estrogen dominance. we have to think about, can my liver actually detoxify the estrogen? Where's the estrogen coming from? Is it from the birth control pill that's creating hormonal havoc, which I'll talk about? Is it from over-synthesizing progesterone, and you're actually utilizing too much progesterone to convert it into cortisol to fight inflammation and regulate blood sugar? And it's not that estrogen's really high, it's just that progesterone's really low in relation to estrogen. So let's look at the birth control pill or all these other hormonal type of therapies. The birth control pill and all these other therapies basically create hormonal havoc. They're designed to basically create an estrogen excess in the body, which is highly inflammatory, and does everything I just talked about, overloads the liver, downregulates T3, inhibits the thyroid, and so forth. But it's very antagonistic to progesterone, and it actually downregulates progesterone. So you see a lot of women that are on the birth control pill. It's a time bomb. It creates edema, hypertension, cancer, stroke, swelling, PMS, all these different things, insomnia that women are complaining about. And you have to think about it. The medical industry is so in tune with giving women estrogen, estrogen, estrogen. And the question is, why do we give them estrogen? Progesterone can actually regulate, whether you take it or upregulate it through nutrition. It can regulate the oxidative pathway to make sure that the body is converting the right amount of estrogen into estrone and not estradiol, which is the more dangerous type of estrogen. Another thing we have to look at, like I mentioned, is the over-synthesizing of progesterone. That might be creating an estrogen dominance. That might be creating a lot of your PMS, a lot of your symptoms. So it's not that you actually need more progesterone. It's that you're over-synthesizing it from cortisol to fight stress and regulate blood sugar. Now, this can be from birth control pills and so forth, but we have to look at the foods we're eating. And what if we use things like Dr. P talks about, the right types of anti-inflammatory foods, the right fruits to get the sugar, the right fishes to get the selenium, to help with that thyroid conversion. And utilizing raw carrots and bamboo shoots in your diet 1 time per day to actually help the liver prevent the reabsorption of estrogen in the small intestine, to absorb endotoxin and to eliminate them in your stool, to actually downregulate that basic blocking that's going on of thyroid conversion. Because when we do that, then we're going to upregulate progesterone, pregnenolone, and cholesterol conversion. I know I'm going fast here, but I'm trying to get a lot in for you guys, so listen to it many times. And the last thing we have to look at is thyroid health. There's many things we can look at, but we have to look at thyroid health. Does that person need some type of glandular? Do they need to get a lab done? Do they need to go to see their doctor? Most doctors are going to prescribe T4. That's by itself highly excitatory to the brain and very catabolic. In my opinion, that's what most people don't need. If you study the work of Broda Barnes, he talks about that most people are going to need some type of combination, or actually more of a T3 in conjunction with a nutrition to get the glucose and the selenium, because your liver is actually dependent on that to make the conversion. And when you have that, now you're converting cholesterol, it needs T3 and vitamin A from liver, dairy, and eggs, to make pregnenolone, which is going to make all your steroidal hormones, one of them being progesterone, and it's going to downregulate estrogen and all those inflammatory markers in the body. Hopefully you enjoyed this YouTube clip. You listen to it many times. I'm rambling, I'm talking fast, but I want to get in as much as I can. The key point is to understand your cycle. Think about is it an estrogen excess? Is it a progesterone deficiency? What I can do nutritionally to regulate this, and how I can use my foods to downregulate estrogen and help with the conversion of cholesterol to pregnenolone to progesterone, to downregulate a lot of the symptoms that you women are suffering. Thanks for tuning in, and that was for all the women out there suffering. Peace.